Welcome to Forbidden Desires channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. I've always been the one to dig deep, to unearth the hidden truths that others might overlook. My name is Isabella, and I've always prided myself on being a dedicated reporter chasing stories that matter. My life until recently was pretty straightforward. I live with my husband Theodore, a kind-hearted architect with a passion for sustainable design, and our beloved beautiful dog, Tank, a loyal golden retriever who has been part of our family for years. Our home is filled with laughter, love, and the occasional chaos that Tank brings with his playful energy. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, something was about to unravel that would change everything. First sign was subtle, almost imperceptible. It was the way Theodore's phone would light up with messages. The screen quickly turned away from my line of sight. His laughter, once a melody I cherished now, seemed to echo with a tone of secrecy. I remember one evening as we sat on our porch, Tank at our feet. Theodore received a text. He glanced at it, his face lighting up with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes when he looked at me. "Work stuff," he'd say, but there was a new edge to his voice, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. I started to notice other things too. The late nights at the office became more frequent, the excuses more elaborate. Theodore, who had always been an open book to me, was now a novel with pages missing. My instincts, honed by years of investigative journalism, kicked in. I began to observe, to listen, to piece together the puzzle that was forming in front of me. One day, while Theodore was at work, I found myself going through his things, something I had never done before. Felt like a betrayal, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I found nothing at first, but then in the back of his drawer there was a small velvet box. My heart raced as I opened it, expecting perhaps an early anniversary gift instead. There was a delicate bracelet, one I had never seen before, with an inscription that read, "Forever yours, Jay." The air seemed to thicken around me, my breath catching in my throat. Who was this Jay? Was it Theodore, or was there another Jay in his life? The bracelet was a mine, and the realization hit me like a cold wave. I closed the box, my mind racing with possibilities, none of them comforting. That evening I tried to act normal, but every smile felt forced, every laugh hollow. Theodore seemed oblivious to the storm brewing within me. We ate dinner, talked about mundane things, but my mind was elsewhere, piecing together the fragments of our life that no longer seemed to fit perfectly. The next morning I decided to follow him. It wasn't something I was proud of, but the need to know was overwhelming. I watched from a distance as he left for work, his usual route, but then he veered off, heading towards a part of town we rarely visited. My heart pounded in my chest. As I followed, keeping a safe distance, he parked outside a quaint cafe, and there she was waiting for him, a woman elegant with a smile that seemed to light up her face. When she saw Theodore, they hugged, a hug that lingered too long. Too intimate for your colleagues or friends. I felt a pang of betrayal, a sharp pain in my chest. As I watched them sit down, their conversation animated, their laughter genuine, it was clear this wasn't the first time they had met like this. I drove back home, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Tank greeted me at the door, his tail wagging, oblivious to the turmoil in my heart. I sat on the couch, Tank's head on my lap, his presence a small comfort in the chaos of my thoughts. But little did I know a storm was brewing, one that would shake the very foundation of our lives. It all started on a seemingly ordinary day. Theodore had left early for a conference out of town, leaving me with a quiet house and a long list of articles to write. Tank, sensing my solitude, stuck close by, his presence comforting. I decided to take him for a walk in our favorite park, a place where the city's noise fades into the background and the tranquility of nature takes over as we walked. I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease, a premonition of sorts, but I dismissed it as stress from work. Park was unusually quiet that morning. The usual chatter of families and joggers replaced by a serene silence. Tank trotted ahead, his nose to the ground, exploring every scent that crossed our path. I tried to focus on the beauty around me, the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the path. But my mind kept drifting back to the image of Theodore and that woman at the cafe. As we ventured deeper into the park, something unexpected was about to happen. Tank suddenly stopped, his ears perked up, and he let out a low growl. I followed his gaze to see a figure approaching from the distance. My heart skipped a beat. As I recognized the silhouette, it was her, the woman from the cafe. She was walking briskly, her eyes fixed on something in her hands, not noticing us at first. I felt a surge of adrenaline, my journalist instincts. Kicking in here was an opportunity to confront her to get answers. But as she neared, she looked up, her eyes meeting mine. There was a flicker of recognition, then panic. She turned abruptly as if to flee, but I called out to her. "Wait, please." My voice was steadier than I felt. She hesitated, then stopped, her posture tense. "To think we need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked around, perhaps checking for an escape route, but then she nodded, her expression resigned. We sat on a nearby bench, Tank lying at my feet, his eyes still on her. "I'm Isabella." I introduced myself, though I knew she must have known who I was. "I'm Sophia," she replied, her voice soft, almost apologetic. The name hit me like a punch. Sophia, the J on the bracelet. My mind raced with questions, but I needed to stay composed. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. Sophia looked down at her hands, twisting a ring on her finger. "A few months," she admitted. "It started as just work, but then it became more." The words were like knives, each one slicing through the fabric of my life. "Why?" It was all I could manage to say. She sighed, a sound filled with regret. "I didn't mean for it to happen. Theodore, he's different with me. Talks about his dreams, his fears, things he said he couldn't share with you." I felt a sting of betrayal, not just from Theodore, but from the realization that I had failed to see this side of him. "And you think that's enough to justify this?" "No. I know it's not," Sophia said quickly. "I'm not proud of what we've done. I needed to tell someone I'm leaving the city. Isabella, I wanted to end it before I left." The confession did little to ease the pain. "Does he know you're leaving?" She shook her head. "I haven't told him yet. I was going to today." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, the journalist, always seeking the truth. Yet the truth had come to me. In this unexpected, painful way. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared secret hanging between us. Then Sophia stood up. Her decision made. "I am sorry, Brew." Truly, as she walked away. I watched her figure disappear into the park. The reality of my situation settling in. Tank nuzzled my hand, offering silent support. I knew then that the confrontation was just the beginning. The storm was indeed brewing, and it was about to unleash its full force on our lives. I stood up, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders, but also a resolve. I had to confront Theodore to understand why he felt the need to seek solace elsewhere. But more than that, I needed to decide what this meant for us. For our future. With Tank by my side, I walked back home, each step heavy with the burden of the truth. I now carried the park. Once a place of peace had become the stage for a revelation that would alter the course of my life forever. Park was unusually empty that day, and as we reached the quiet garden behind an old ivy-covered building, Tank started acting strangely. He was more playful than usual, almost insistent in a moment of weakness. Overwhelmed by loneliness and the soothing silence of the garden, I found myself engaging in an act that would haunt me forever. I had sex with Tank. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was left in a state of shock and disbelief at what I had done. But the real shock was yet to come. As the consequences of this moment began to unfold, I sat on the bench, my mind reeling, trying to process the gravity of what had just happened. Tank, now calm, lay at my feet, his head resting on my shoes, looking up at me with those deep, understanding eyes. The silence of the garden seemed to mock me. Each rustle of leaves, a whisper of my guilt. I knew I had to leave to escape the scene of my indiscretion, but my legs felt like lead. As I stood, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Theodore. My heart sank further. I couldn't face him. Not now, not with this secret weighing me down like a stone. Isabella. Where are you? His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a hint of concern or perhaps suspicion. I'm at the park with Tank. I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. Can you come home? We need to talk. The words echoed in my head. We need to talk. How many times had I heard that phrase in my line of work, always preceding a revelation, a confession, or a confrontation? Now it was my turn to be on the receiving end. I walked home, each step feeling like a march to my own execution. Tank trotted beside me, his presence a small comfort in the storm of my thoughts. The house was quiet. When I entered, Theodore was sitting at the kitchen table, his laptop closed, his hands clasped together. Isabella, sit down, he said, his voice steady but his eyes avoiding mine. I sat, my heart pounding in my chest. What's this about Theodore? He took a deep breath, his gaze finally meeting mine. I've been thinking a lot about us, about our life together. I've made mistakes. I've been unfaithful. Confession, though expected, still felt like a physical blow. My mind flashed back to Sophia in the park, her words of regret, the bracelet, everything. But now there was another layer of betrayal, my own. I know, I said, my voice flat. I saw you with her. Sophia. Theodore's face fell, the color draining from his cheeks. You knew, yes, and I confronted her. She's leaving town. Theodore, she told me everything. He looked down, his hands now trembling. I'm so sorry. Isabella, I never meant for any of this to happen. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with the weight of our confessions, and I've made a mistake too. Theodore. I whispered the words, tasting like ash in my mouth. His eyes snapped back to mine, confusion and fear mingling in his gaze. What do you mean? I couldn't look at him. I did something I deeply regret today, something I can't take back. The silence stretched between us, heavy and oppressive. Theodore's face was a mask of confusion and hurt. What did you do? Isabella, I took a deep breath, the words sticking in my throat. I was alone, feeling so lost, and I made a grave mistake with Tank. Theodore's reaction was immediate, his face contorting in shock and disgust with Tank. Our beautiful dog. I nodded, tears now streaming down my face. I know it's unforgivable. I was overwhelmed, not thinking clearly. It was a moment of madness. The room spun as Theodore stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need some air, he said, his voice cold, distant. He walked out, leaving me alone with my guilt and Tank, who looked up at me with those same unjudging eyes. I sat there, the silence now a deafening roar in my ears. The realization of what I had done, coupled with Theodore's confession, left me feeling hollow, like a shell of the person I once was. The next few hours were a blur. Theodore returned, his face unreadable. We talked, or rather he talked, and I listened, trying to piece together the fragments of our shattered life. He spoke of his feelings for Sophia, how it started as an escape from the pressures of work and life, how it spiraled into something neither of them could control. I listened. My own confession hanging between us like a specter. We decided to seek counseling to try and salvage what was left of our marriage, but the trust, once broken, seemed irreparable. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of our secrets, our betrayals, began to shape our interactions. Theodore moved to the guest room, and our conversations became stilted, filled with the unspoken. One evening, as I sat alone in our once shared bedroom, Tank by my side, I received a call from an unknown number. Isabella, it's Sophia. Her voice was hesitant, almost fearful. I need to see you, it's important. The next day we met at a different park, one less familiar, less haunted by our past. Sophia looked different, her face drawn, her eyes shadowed with worry. I'm pregnant. Isabella, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And it's Theodore's. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, another layer of complexity, another betrayal. I felt the ground beneath me give way, my life spiraling further into chaos. I wanted you to hear it from me. Sophia continued, I'm not asking for anything. I just thought you deserved to know. I nodded. Number the implications of her words sinking in. Thank you for telling me. I managed my voice devoid of emotion as I walked back home. Tank at my side, I realized that the storm I thought had passed was merely the eye of the hurricane. The real turmoil was just beginning. My life, once filled with love and laughter, was now a landscape of ruin. Each new revelation a step further into the abyss. Park, once a place of solace, had become the crucible of my darkest moments, a place where the truth in all its painful forms was laid bare. And as I walked the weight of my own actions, my own betrayal felt like a millstone around my neck, a constant reminder of the person I had become in the days that followed. I was a shell of my former self. Guilt consumed me, and I couldn't look at Theodore or Tank without feeling a wave of nausea. I started avoiding Tank, which confused him, and Theodore noticed the change in my behavior. He tried to reach out asking if something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. My work suffered. My articles were uninspired, and my editor noticed the decline in my performance. Every morning I'd wake up with a heavy heart, dreading the day ahead. The house, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, now felt like a mausoleum, each room echoing with the ghosts of our past happiness. Theodore, trying to bridge the gap, would make coffee, set it beside me with a hopeful smile. But I could barely muster a nod. His attempts at normalcy only deepened my guilt. I found myself wandering through our home, touching the things that once brought us joy. The framed photos of our wedding, the quirky art pieces Theodore had designed, even Tank's toys scattered around each object, was a reminder of what we had lost, or rather what I had destroyed at work. My colleagues noticed the change too. My usual enthusiasm was gone, replaced by a mechanical routine of typing and research, devoid of the passion that once fueled my stories. My editor, Mrs. Larson, pulled me aside one afternoon, her face etched with concern. Isabella, what's going on? Your last piece was, well, lacked your usual spark, she said, her voice gentle but firm. I forced a smile, just going through some personal stuff. Mrs. Larson, I'll get back on track soon, she nodded, but her eyes told me she wasn't convinced. Take care of yourself, Isabella. We need you at your best, but how could I be at my best when every moment was a reminder of my betrayal? The betrayal of Theodore? Yes, but also of myself, of the person I thought I was. One evening as the sun set, casting long shadows through our living room, Theodore approached me. He sat beside me on the couch, his presence both comforting and suffocating. Isabella, we can't keep going like this, he said, his voice breaking the silence that had become our norm. We need to talk, really talk. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. I know. Theodore, I'm scared. Scared of what his eyes searched mine, looking for the truth I had been hiding. Scared of losing you, of losing us. I confessed, my voice barely a whisper, and scared of what I've done, what I've become. He took my hand, his touch warm and familiar, yet it felt like a stranger's. I've made mistakes too. Isabella, we both have, but we can't fix this if we don't face it together. The honesty in his words, the pain in his eyes. It was all too much. I pulled my hand away, standing up abruptly. I need some air. I walked out into the evening, the cool air doing little to clear my mind. Tank followed, his tail low. Sensing the tension, we walked to our usual spot by the river, where the water's gentle flow had always brought me peace. But tonight it only mirrored my turmoil. As I sat on the bench watching the river, I realized the depth of my isolation. Theodore, a affair, my own unthinkable act. And now Sophia's pregnancy. It was all too much. The weight of these secrets was crushing me, pushing me towards a precipice. I wasn't sure I could return from. Tank lay beside me, his head on my lap, offering silent support. I stroked his fur, each touch a reminder of my betrayal. What have I done? Tank. I whispered, more to myself than to him. The night grew darker, and with it my resolve hardened. I knew I had to confront Theodore not just about his affair but about everything. The truth, no matter how painful, was the only path forward. But as I spiraled, a revelation was about to force me into a corner. I couldn't escape from returning home. I found Theodore in the kitchen, his back to me as he washed dishes. The mundane act seemed surreal against the backdrop of our crumbling life. "Theodore." I started, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to talk about everything, no more secrets." He turned, his expression unreadable. "Everything." "Yes," I confirmed, my heart in my throat. "Everything." The room felt charged, the air thick with anticipation. Theodore dried his hands slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. "Kka. Isabella, let's talk." As we sat down at the kitchen table, the place where so many of our life decisions had been made. I knew this conversation would be different. It would either be the beginning of our healing or the final unraveling of our marriage. But one thing was clear: the storm was upon us and there was no turning back. One evening, Theodore came home early, his face pale, holding a small device in his hand. It was a GPS tracker. He had put on Tank for safety, but it had recorded more than just Tank's location. The video footage was clear and there was no denying what had happened. Theodore's eyes were filled with pain and confusion as he confronted me. The room felt like it was closing it on me and I could barely breathe as I confessed everything, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Isabella, what is this?" Theodore's voice was a mix of hurt and disbelief. As he held up the device, his hand trembling, I looked at the screen, my heart sinking into my stomach. There it was, undeniable evidence of my darkest moment. "Theodore, I don't know what to say." I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know what to say." His voice rose, a mix of anger and despair. "How could you do this?" "Isabella, with Tank, our beautiful dog." The room spun around me, the weight of my actions crashing down. I was alone. Theodore. I felt so lost, so betrayed by everything. It was a moment of madness, a lapse in judgment that I deeply regret. Theodore paced the room, his hands running through his hair. "This isn't just about betrayal. Isabella, this is beyond anything I could have imagined. How do we come back from this?" Tears streamed down my face, each one a testament to the gravity of my mistake. "I don't know if we can, but I need to tell you everything. Theodore, no more secrets." He stopped pacing and faced me. His expression, a mask of confusion and pain. "Everything, what else is there?" Isabella, taking a deep breath. I continued. "I knew about Sophia before you told me. I saw you with her at the cafe and I confronted her. She's pregnant. Theodore, with your child." The air seemed to leave the room. Theodore sat down heavily on the couch, his face ashen. "Pregnant, Sophia is pregnant." His voice was hollow, the reality sinking in. "Yes." I confirmed, my voice steady now, though my heart was anything. "But she told me she's leaving town, but she wanted me to know." Theodore's gaze was distant, lost in a turmoil of emotions. "Two need to think. Isabella, I need space." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched him, feeling the chasm between us widen with each passing second. "I understand," I whispered, knowing that the space he needed might never close. Days turned into a week and the house felt like a mausoleum. Theodore moved his things to the guest room and our interactions were reduced to necessary exchanges, each word heavy with the unspoken. I avoided Tank, unable to face him, my guilt manifesting in every glance he gave me. His eyes filled with confusion and hurt at work. My articles were mechanical, devoid of the passion that once drove my writing. Mrs. Larson, my editor, called me into her office, her concern palpable. "Isabella, your work has been slipping. Is there something you need to talk about?" she asked, her voice gentle. I shook my head, unable to share the depth of my personal chaos, just personal issues. "Mrs. Larson, I'll get back on track." But how could I get back on track when my life was in shambles? Every night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation with Theodore. The revelation of Sophia's pregnancy, and my own unforgivable act. The weight of these secrets was crushing me, pushing me towards a precipice. I wasn't sure I could return from one evening as the sun set, casting long shadows through our living room. Theodore approached me. He sat beside me on the couch, his presence both comforting and suffocating. "Isabella, we can't keep going like this," he said, his voice breaking the silence that had become our norm. "We need to talk, really talk." I turned to face him, my heart pounding. "I know, Theodore, I'm scared. Scared of what." His eyes searched mine, looking for the truth I had been hiding. "Scared of losing you, of losing us," I confessed, my voice barely a whisper, "and scared of what I've done, what I've become." He took my hand, his touch warm and familiar, yet it felt like a stranger's. "I've made mistakes too. Isabella, we both have, but we can't fix this if we don't face it together." The honesty in his words, the pain in his eyes. It was all too much. I pulled my hand away, standing up abruptly. "I need some air." I walked out into the evening, the cool air doing little to clear my mind. Tank followed, his tail low, sensing the tension. We walked to our usual spot by the river, where the water's gentle flow had always brought me peace. But tonight it only mirrored my turmoil. As I sat on the bench watching the river, I realized the depth of my isolation, Theodore's affair, my own unthinkable act, and now Sophia's pregnancy. It was all too much. The weight of these secrets was crushing me, pushing me towards a precipice. I wasn't sure I could return from. Tank lay beside me, his head on my lap, offering silent support. I stroked his fur, each touch a reminder of my betrayal. "What have I done?" "Tank?" I whispered, more to myself than to him. The night grew darker, and with it my resolve hardened. I knew I had to confront Theodore, not just about his affair, but about everything. The truth, no matter how painful, was the only path forward. But as I spiraled, a revelation was about to force me into a corner. I couldn't escape from returning home. I found Theodore in the kitchen, his back to me as he washed dishes. The mundane act seemed surreal against the backdrop of our crumbling life. "Theodore," I started, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to talk about everything, no more secrets." He turned, his expression unreadable. "Everything, yes." I confirmed, my heart in my throat. Everything. The room felt charged, the air thick with anticipation. Theodore dried his hands slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. "Isabella, let's talk." As we sat down at the kitchen table, the place where so many of our life decisions had been made, I knew this conversation would be different. It would either be the beginning of our healing or the final unraveling of our marriage. But one thing was clear, the storm was upon us and there was no turning back. The days that followed were a blur of tears, therapy sessions, and long, painful conversations. Theodore, despite his initial shock and anger, chose to stay to work through this betrayal. We sought help not just for our marriage but for me to understand what had driven me to such an act. Tank, sensing the tension, became more subdued. His once vibrant spirit dimmed. We decided to move forward, not forgetting but learning to live with the scar. Theodore and I rebuilt our trust, piece by piece, understanding that love isn't just about the good times but also about surviving the darkest moments. As for Tank, he remained with us, a constant reminder of our journey through the storm. The therapy sessions were grueling. Each session felt like peeling back layers of our relationship, exposing raw nerves. Dr. Charlotte, our therapist, was patient, guiding us through the mire of our emotions. Theodore spoke of his feelings of neglect, how he felt I was more married to my work than to him. I, in turn, shared my feelings of isolation, the pressure of my career, and how his affair with Sophia had shattered my trust. One evening, after a particularly intense session, we sat in silence on our porch. The night was cool, the stars obscured by clouds, much like the clarity in our relationship. Theodore broke the silence first. "Isabella, do you think we can ever go back to how things were?" His voice was soft, almost lost in the night. I looked at him, his profile illuminated by the dim light from the living room. I don't think we can, Theodore, but maybe we can build something new, something stronger. He nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I've been thinking a lot about Sophia, about the baby. I need to be there for them, but I also need to be here for us. The mention of Sophia and the baby always sent a pang through my heart, a reminder of the life growing outside our marriage, a life that was part of Theodore. I understand, I said, my voice steady. We'll figure it out together, Our conversations began to shift. We talked about the future, about what we wanted, about how we could coexist with the new reality. Theodore started attending parenting classes, preparing for the arrival of his child with Sophia. I, on the other hand, focused on my recovery, both personal and professional. I started writing again, pouring my soul into articles that explored themes of betrayal, forgiveness, and redemption. One day, as I was working from home, Tank came up to me, his tail wagging hesitantly. I had been avoiding him, but now, looking into his eyes, I saw only loyalty and love. I reached out, patting him gently. I'm sorry, Tank, I whispered, tears welling up. I'm so sorry. That moment marked a turning point. I began to reconnect with Tank, understanding that he was as much a victim in this as anyone. Theodore noticed the change, and one evening he joined us on the floor, playing with Tank, laughter slowly returning to our home. Months passed, and with them the due date for Sophia's baby approached. Theodore was torn, his responsibilities divided. He made arrangements to support Sophia financially and emotionally, but he remained committed to our marriage, to rebuilding what we had lost. The day Sophia went into labor, Theodore was with her at the hospital. I stayed home, the house eerily quiet without him. I sat with Tank, his head on my lap, both of us waiting for news. When Theodore called, his voice was a mix of joy and sorrow. It's a girl. Isabella, she's beautiful. I felt a surge of emotions, complex and intertwined. Congratulations. Theodore, what's her name? Eleanor, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Sophia named her Eleanor. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Eleanor is a lovely name. When Theodore returned home, there was a new depth to his eyes, a father's love mixed with the pain of our fractured relationship. We sat together discussing how this would change our lives, how we would navigate this new chapter. Therapy continued, and slowly we found a rhythm. Theodore was there for Eleanor, visiting her on weekends while I supported him trying to find my place in this new family dynamic. We learned to communicate better, to express our fears and hopes without the shadow of past betrayals looming over us. One evening, as we sat in our now more peaceful living room, Theodore took my hand. Isabella, I know it's been hard, but I want you to know I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of his commitment. I know, Theodore, and I'm here too. We're in this together, but could our love truly survive this? Or was this just the beginning of a new uncertain chapter? Question lingered in the air, a silent testament to the fragility of trust and the enduring strength of love. As we looked at each other, the answer wasn't clear, but the journey we were on was one. We chose to walk together, hand in hand, with Tank by our side, a symbol of our past, our pain, and our potential for healing. My story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next videos.